our rhythm is to do these webinars every 2 weeks, with the first week of the first time in the month is a broad introduction to the topic. And then when we do our ID masterclass session 2 weeks later, it's for those people who are particularly interested in getting into the nuances of, probably when I say ID, more the whole of the ID and how it applies to that particular topic. The one today is around goal setting, or planning and goal setting, given that it's the brand new year and a lot of people have made their New Year's resolutions or made their plans for the year. And even after the first few weeks, it's easy to either have forgotten them, be off track with them, or be struggling with them somehow, as opposed to checking the boxes and saying, yes, I'm on track, or I've achieved that. The other part of that is we tend to set up goals for the year. Like we say, this is my 2022 goals, but do they need the whole year? Do they need just a month? Where else could they take us? So we'll explore that as we get into today. I thought a way to do this, given that there's a lot of people on the call that are quite familiar with ID and do want some advanced sort of knowledge, is rather than listening to me chat away for an hour or even half an hour, I thought it might be good to go through the ID drives and hear from people who represent a particular drive and say, well, how do you do goal setting and how have you done it? What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? So if you've got a similar ID, you might learn things like what type of goals do those people shoot for, and how do they go about it in a way that works or doesn't work, and learn from them. We'll piece together that in a tool and share that with you at the end. So if we get through all 8 drives today, and we probably will try and keep it pretty quick to do that, you'll end up with a matrix at the end of it that says these are the things that people use to be in stride with their goal setting and planning, and here are the things that trip them up. And then when we do our ID masterclass in 2 weeks' time, we'll dig deeper into those things to maybe talk about, well, okay, how do we start to combat those, especially taking into account your whole ID? Because goal setting and planning, it's the nemesis for most people for their entire life. There's things that they've put on that list this year that were on that list 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Could be as simple as trying to get fit, lose weight, give up smoking, drink less, make more money, save more money, have a better life balance. And those sorts of things have been elusive, goals or desires for people. And there are other people that can set a goal or have something on their, on their list and they just nail it. And let's talk about why, because I know that there are different tools out there for goal setting. I mean, a lot of us have heard about things like the SMART system, being an acronym for the ways you can approach goal setting. But even when people have tried to use different tools and processes, they have varying degrees of success. So let's work it through from an ID perspective, and then we'll see what insights come out of that for each of the different drives. Before we get into the topic, though, for those of you who are new to this webinar, these webinars were really, the genesis of them was through a tough time like the pandemic, when there was a whole wave of fear and uncertainty and confusion. It was a process that would give people a regular opportunity to just check in with how they're navigating all of that, uncertainty, and do it from a place of being in stride and at their best. And so I want to just take a moment today, and I'll just share my slide here with you to remind you of what this looks like for you. So we have this slide, which we call a peak performance indicator. And this is what it looks like. So the green arrow in the middle of the page is when you're in stride. And that's when you get the things at the top of that chart. So if you want to give your very best performance or have your most fulfilling day or week or month, and you want your, strong confidence, self-esteem, great health and energy, that all comes about when you're coming from a place of being in stride. And anytime you get pulled off track to the left or to the right, you compromise all of the things at the top, but you also start to experience various forms of stress, anything from energy and temper and tantrums and swearing and so on at the lesser level, through to significant health issues if you are way out of stride with what being true to you looks like. People who get really advanced with this start to tune into what are their early warning signals. So when they start getting pulled off stride, they notice things that occur in their body or in their behavior that reminds them, hey, you know, they need to get back on track. That's what the people who are really living and influencing at their best tend to do. It's not that they've just found the right niche for their knack and they're, you know, in a great, just happen to be in a great relationship or a great role and everything's, you know, going swimmingly. They normally still have the turbulent times. They just have a way of navigating them so they stay in stride. So my question to you today is, you're living life and life is dishing its stuff up at you. And where are you? Are you dealing with all that from a place of being in stride and at your best? Or are you being pulled way off to the left or to the right? And you're compromised in terms of not only your performance, but your fulfillment and your confidence and your health, and experiencing different forms of stress. So a way that we do that is to think, okay, on a scale of 0 to 10, if 10 is being really in stride on that green arrow there, that's, you know, in the zone, as the athletes say, and everything's coming pretty easily. And a 1 out of 10 is where you're way up to the left or way up to the right. What's the number that comes up for you today? And we might just quickly whip around the room, where you can actually put it in the chat, in the Zoom chat, and just put down what is your number. And that will help everyone get a quick pulse of, you know, who's who in the zoo. So you can see there's some 7s, 8s, 7 from Judy, 6, 9 for Julianne, good score. 7 from Steve, Mary 6, Samara 7, 9.5, good on you, Gail. Good for you, Doug, 8, that's good. I would say today I'm a 9 myself. The goal, guys, is to get to live from a place of being an 8 or above. And the reason I say that is it's not a competition, but if you think about the one life that you have to live, and not only living it so that you're getting real fulfillment out of it, but you're casting the best possible influence of the people around you, you know, getting something from you, not by anything you do or say, but just by the way you're vibrating your life. It can either be one that inspires and excites others, or it's one that creates an energy that people don't necessarily either get anything from, or maybe they don't want to be around it. So if you want to have your best possible mark in the world and the best relationships you can have, what we have found is that when people are at that 8, 9, or 10 level, that's when they're having their best possible influence. And the power of ID is it actually can help uncover your formula. We call it your personal success code for what you need to be able to get from whatever your score is today at a, you know, 5, 6, 7, how to get that to an 8, 9, or 10, and then how to stay there. Because it is the first thing I think a lot of people question when they learn about ID is this really possible, or is this just an ideology? And for those of you who have been around this, you know, for some time, as many of you have, you know that it's not just pie in the sky. It really is possible to live life very consistently in that 8, 9, and 10 zone, and therefore make your best possible mark on the world and get the best out of life yourself. Does anyone have anything they'd like to comment on about this score or share with the group, particularly if it's shifted up or down in recent time?
I can share.
Thanks, Alana.
To me, I felt like I was living on a higher number, I guess, when I had a really clear goal of moving to a place and starting a job.
Yeah.
And I did. So that was my goal for a few months. And then once I achieved that, it's been a couple months now where I feel like I don't know what to aspire to now.
Right. And so when you look at, go on.
Not that I noticed that I shifted back because I didn't have that same push and drive to work towards my goals anymore.
Correct. And that's true. When you look at your ID, so you're a strong completer, any completer, a completer will say, I need a plan, but what they need before the plan is a sense of direction, you know, first, and then you need a plan, and then you need to feel some momentum progressing on the plan. And if you've ticked that box and you've done it and you go, well, what's next? You know, but you can't see what the next is. But then even if you've been super successful, there'll be a flattening of your energy because you've got a drive, and that's why we call it a drive. It's an energy inside you that's begging for something to work towards. You know, it's particularly complete. It's got to have something you can look forward to, and a plan and a direction gives you that sense of, you know, what to look forward to. So it's really cool that you've already realized that in yourself and can now work on, well, what is the next going to be? You know, good on you. Now there's more to it. We're talking about one drive there, which is your complete drive. As you know, you've got 3 strong drives, the 7 in Verify, the 3 in Improvise, are your other strong drives. So they will weigh into that as well. And they need to be addressed in order for you to be, you know, properly in harmony, basically. And we'll talk about them as we get more into today. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'd like to comment, Paul.
Thanks, Judy.
And as you know, I am driven to complete. And so I can feel that in me. And I appreciate, is it Alana? Alana, what you shared, Alana? Thank you for that. Because I feel driven to complete. And for about 6 months now, I've been without energy. And it's a very interesting, I'm so grateful that I've had the ID, because it's helped me understand more about how I'm feeling. And so this morning, I went to see my chiropractor, which I do 3 times a month, and he worked on a particular meridian at like about 10 o'clock this morning. And by 11 o'clock, my energy was totally different. I have energy now that I haven't had for 6 months.
Wow.
And so I'm experiencing now a whole different kind of feeling, because I have my plan. I know what I need to do, and I'm driven to complete. And because I haven't had the energy to work on that, there is so much that I need to do that I'm now in a state of, where do I start first? What do I do first? And so it's just, you know, it's so interesting, the perspective that my ID has given me. And in terms of goals, you know, if I decide that I'm going to do something and I have a plan to do it, and I have the energy, there is no stopping me. Absolutely no stopping me.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you. All right, Dilip, I think you wanted to share something.
Yeah, so I put down a 6 for myself, which is the lowest ever on this call. And I've been on probably at least maybe 10 to 15 calls. So I'm not kind of feeling good about it, but I also kind of know that it's kind of it's a temporary thing, and I'm struggling to manage it. Right, so I'll be kind of more specific now. So the issue is around expectations of other people, right? That is where it kind of it trips me up usually, and I got tripped up again before this call, as it relates to my teenage daughter, a 15-year-old. Not easy, as some of you can imagine. But I've been asking her to do certain things, and they're not happening. And over the past few weeks, so I kind of exploded today, right? So pent up frustration. Now I'm feeling bad now that I kind of exploded that way, right? So yeah. So I know that this is not the first time it has happened. I know that I'll kind of eventually kind of come out of it. But it's kind of a crappy place to be in, right? Like, so I know it's temporary, but I use it's the struggle to kind of the broader theme is expectations you have of other people, and then when they don't do it as you'd expect it or as they promised, then things go haywire, right? So I don't know how to divorce myself from expecting of people. That is my challenge. How do I not expect of people?
Good, you've identified it.
Yeah,
So
I just don't have a solution to it. Like, I've not been able to solve it. I've been thinking about this, that I should reduce my expectations of people, but I can't do it.
I'm not going to delve into it and sort of for you right now, Dilip, because I think it'll take us off course with what a lot of people have come to the call for. But perhaps in our next session, and I don't mean for you to necessarily wait the 2 weeks, but that's what our masterclass is for, to be able to delve into some of those challenges and get the benefit of the group, contribution to help solve various, challenges that people bring to the table. So I won't go there today, but I don't want to dismiss what you bring, because I know it's both real and personal, and it would be really upsetting and frustrating. But maybe if someone, you feel close enough to someone on this call, you can also chat offline in between times. But I'm very happy to address that for you in our next masterclass.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, is there anyone else that wanted to just quickly share about their score? Okay, so let's move into the goal setting and planning discussion, and let's start with the Verify Drive. And the way I thought this might work is to hear from people who are strong in that drive around either an important goal that you're focusing on, and what's the strategy you found that works for you relevant to that drive. And we'll work through all 4 drives that way. Is it anyone got, and maybe something you might share as well is what hasn't worked. If you found that there's a goal that you struggled with for several years, and then you finally did something that was a breakthrough, and was that associated with your ID? Who's one of our verifiers that might be willing to share?
Yes, Paul, I'll give that one a go.
Hey, Doug.
I'm in a strange position in that, in terms of peak performance, I look at peak performance in various categories, and most of mine are pretty well settled and going quite well. The one issue I'm dealing with is actually the planning phase, because coming out of this COVID thing and lockdowns and the disruptions, etc., I find I need about 4 or 5 different plans. In other words, it's sort of 4 or 5 different forks in the road, and that's quite unusual. Normally, I'm very good at planning, and I normally go for one plan and give it a full go. What I've wound up with is about 4 or 5 different directions in life and in various areas. Family, finances, etc., all of which are reasonably stable. But I'm in a sort of a dead spot in terms of which of the forks in the road to take, because I need, with my 7643, I need a definite direction.
Okay.
And well, then go for it. And it's a sort of a dead zone.
Let's hear from a couple of other verifiers. They might have something to share that could be helpful. Is there someone else that one of our verifiers that can share what works for them in their goal setting and planning?
It's Leonie. I'm wondering, Doug, is it more you need a definite priority for those forks, or a direction? So does the priority come before the direction? So, and I guess the other thing I would probably ask myself is, where do I want to gain the most in terms of improvement, or gain the most in working on. So but I don't know about others with Verify, but I can find it hard if there are competing priorities, and to work out which is the highest priority. And if I can't work out which is the highest priority, that can be very frustrating.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Because that's the issue is which one to choose and to prioritize it and maybe fit the rest into that main scheme, main direction. No, good point. Great.
You know, one of the things that happens with verifiers in their planning is, you know, people talk about what do you start, what do you stop, and saying no. When I say saying no, taking some of those goals away can have a certain fear associated with it, Doug, but it can also have a simplifying, cleaning out, decluttering sort of notion as well. It's no different to someone holding lots of emails in their inbox or lots of files around them. They've got all the stuff because just in case, but it clutters things up, and it can be very simplifying and liberating to actually say, no, I'm going to not do those things. I'm going to focus on this. And when you make that commitment, you know, you don't really miss the other three things you let go of, but it allows you to get very focused on the one that you did decide was going to be your priority.
And just throw in there, you know, if you've got choices to make, what will align most to your sense of purpose?
Julian, you raise a great point. So, you know, where you think about, so planning and goal setting starts differently for different IDs. For verifiers, it starts with purpose, like the why, WHY, you know, why, and you may not have a why. And if you don't have a why, whatever goals you set are at risk of not following through on them. They might have just been a good idea in the moment. But if you don't root them in a why that's really meaningful to you, and a why that is important, because priorities and important to drive verifiers, it's got to be something that really is, you know, an energizing reaction that you have for that why. So this is why so many people can say, I want to lose weight, and they don't for years until they get told by a doctor to lose the weight, or you're going to die, or you're going to be a diabetic, or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden their why changes, and now they can lose the weight, because whilst it's been a goal and a dream and an aspiration, they didn't have a more compelling why. And so part of what you need to do in goal setting is uncover your why if you're a strong verifier. So to Julianne's point about having that purpose, right? That's huge for verifiers, but it's not the why for every drive. It's a different thing for the authenticators and the completers, and there are, you know, plenty of people that say, I don't care what the why is, I just need a plan. You know, it doesn't matter the reason, right? So, but if you're a verifier, it's really fundamental. And just because that might work for you, if you're either married to, or living with someone who, like children who are different to you ID wise, you know, coming up with the why might be a wild goose chase for them. If they're not a verifier, that is not going to be a mechanism that helps them become any more successful.
Good one. Thanks, Paul.
That's very good.
I would add a few other things for the verifiers. You need to be specific, and you've got to be able to measure it. Verifiers are driven by numbers and being able to analyze things. So the more specific and analytical you get, you know, and precise, the more likely you are to achieve the goal. And you got to take it through to the nth degree.
As a high verifier myself, one of the things that I think what hit on me, you just said, was the why. And sometimes I just keep carrying these goals and my why isn't strong enough for me to do them. And sometimes it's just saying, you know what, I'm going to let go of this one until I get to the diabetes, you know, whatever it is, that maybe it's just not, I don't have a strong enough why. And then also, what's the worst thing? Like, because I get caught up in the planning. I mean, even like doing the paint in my living room, I could look at Pinterest for days looking at different colors. And then I think, oh, what if I paint it the wrong color? Who cares? Like, what's the, you know, what am I losing by making the wrong decision? So I just need to go and jump in. I make myself, I don't have an option. My husband's standing there with the paintbrush, pick a color, you know, and then you're like, okay, if it didn't work, I can fix it. It's not, I'm not doing anything moving across the country to the wrong city. So looking at what are the stakes here, that helps me as well.
Thanks, Kathy. So I'm just going to jump, rather than go through all the drives in order, because you just raised an interesting point. I'll build on it, which is, as a completer, so you're a verifier, and a completer. So you need the compelling why as a verifier, but then you've also got an equally strong drive as a completer that needs a plan. So my question to you would be, for it to be compelling, is it a near-term, what drives you more, a near-term outcome or a longer-term outcome? What comes up for you? What would you say is true for you, Kathy?
The longer term outcome.
Right, exactly. And so for those of you who are completers, and Alana, I'm thinking back to you here, and you've got a very similar ID to Kathy, but as a completer, you can think about setting goals for this year. But one of the things that I've found with completers is if they think about, where is this taking my life? You know, where is this going to get me in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time? That type of plan, or that project, the why associated with 10, 20 or 30 is much more compelling than the why attached to January or February this year. So as an example, someone says they want to lose weight because they've got a wedding coming up, right? So that's relatively near term, might be a year away. Doesn't matter whether you're in the bridal party or not, but they picture the photo and they want to look good at the wedding. Someone says, because that photo of that bridal party is going to be on the mantelpiece for the next 50 years. And all of a sudden that ramps the drive, because it's like, oh, I didn't think about it like that. I was thinking of it just looking good in the photo. But if that photo is going to be around for 50 years, I am so losing the weight today, because it's got a longer term, you know, impact to it, you know. So if you can look at your plans as what's the long-term impact, what's this going to mean for my financial security, for my longer-term health, for my longer-term relationships, for how my children are going to turn out down the track, and when you attach the longer-term ramifications to it, that totally ramps up how compelling your plan becomes if you've got that complete drive. Does that feel true for you, Kathy?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alana, can you relate to that too for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to verify. Anyone got anything else on the verify drive, or do you have, you know, if you've got that drive, either something that's worked or, like Dilip shared before, something that's maybe challenging you right now? All right, so find your why, write it down, get specific, have a way to measure it, and then you check back in on it, because it's the checking, the verify, checking back against it. Be careful to measure the improvement, not how much you fall short. So one of the things that catches verifiers out is no matter how well you're doing, a verifier typically sees what they're missing, not what they're achieving. And it's very easy to feel like you're failing because you're not where you thought you were going to be, or not where you plan to be, but you may well have made more progress than where you were a month ago. So congratulate yourself for that and stay on the journey. Measure the improvement, not the gap between where you expected to be, because maybe that was too far-fetched in the first place. Well, if you see improvement, that's motivating to a verifier. So focus on measuring that. Let's switch to the authenticate drive. So we talked about having that compelling why. If purpose and the why is like the ignition for the verifiers, what's the equivalent for an authenticator? Do we have any authenticators that can see that for them and can share it? What do you need first, and what really makes it compelling for you?
For me, it's actually really a clear picture. So
Exactly.
if I can't see something, so on lots of levels. So if I can't see the end clear picture big enough, that's hard. But if I also can't see the steps towards the picture, that's hard too.
That's spot on. So purpose, think of it like the P's. You know, you've got to have the purpose for the verifier, and it's the picture for the authenticators. That's so true. And Lenny described it really well. It's a clear picture, and the picture isn't just the end result, it's in how you get there as well, how it's all working. And the picture's got to be one that's actually working, like this has got to be real. The clearer that picture is, the more compelling it becomes. And if someone isn't taking action and they've got that authenticate drive, it's probably because the picture either isn't clear or the steps, like the subcomponents of the picture, are not clear. I'd start with that. That's the very first thing. I want to add a couple of things to this for you. So the first is clear picture. The thing to be, every drive has a little success code to achieve, but there are also little vulnerabilities that come with it that can pull you off track. Now, for an authenticator, the identity you have of yourself, so the picture you have of yourself, it can be like a demon. Because if you picture yourself as a smoker and you're trying to give up smoking, you can have a clear picture, but you've also got a clear picture of being a smoker, and sort of one can negate the other. So if tomorrow morning someone says to you at 10 o'clock, hey, you're coming downstairs for, this is back when you could go to work and work with people beside you, and they say, you're coming downstairs for a cigarette. If you don't have a clear picture of what is it going to look like at 10 o'clock tomorrow when you get asked that question of what are you going to do as an alternative, your identity will be more compelling and it will make you go downstairs and have a cigarette, because that's what you do at 10 o'clock every day. That's the picture that's there. So unless you have a compelling picture that's clear, not just of the end goal, but these distractions that occur, like you want to drink less, you don't want to drink during the week. What happens if there's a birthday or an event during the week? What are you going to do there? What's your clear picture for that? So if you don't have clear sub pictures for combating those things that can distract you, you're vulnerable to falling back to like the thermostat that has become your normal identity. And that, for me, when I've worked with authenticators and had breakthroughs, it hasn't just been about helping them shape the picture. It's about zeroing in on what their current identity is that trips them up, because that sets the thermostat, and then looking at what strategies do we need to counteract the effect of that thermostat or that identity that they have. The other thing I would say is, for an authenticator, once you've got that clear picture, you need to take action. I mean, it's the drive that needs to take action and do something about it. So start doing it. It doesn't almost matter what you do, start doing. And the physicality of that just sort of ignites something else in your system to then keep going. But that's just so important that you're not just thinking about it or planning it. You do take action, and you can always course correct. So it's not about doing every step right along the way. It's just that you start, and by taking some action, you'll be able to then course correct and keep building on that towards your end goal picture. Can we hear from some authenticators about either the examples of that or what else they've done that is maybe examples of the picture, or in addition to the picture, something else you can see is true to your authenticate drive?
Paul, can I say something?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't turn on my video, unfortunately. Now I'm in the car, but I can talk. So this is a challenge I have, right? And this, as it relates to goal setting and to-do lists specifically, right? Like kind of set out the goals, whether it's daily goals or monthly goals or yearly goals, whatever they are, right? And the list gets so long, and then I get to do like complete only like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20, 25% of it. And then it gets kind of frustrating, right? Like, hey, I set this out, I started this week expecting to do these 25 things. I got only 5 things done, and then I feel miserable. And this happens over and over and over again, right? It's been kind of, at least for me, right? And so I've never been able to get a handle on goal setting as it relates to managing to-do lists.
Do you feel like you've had a clear picture, Dylan?
Yeah. I do feel like I had a clear picture, but it's I'm not able to get everything done? Is it, am I taking on too much, or is it really not important? Even though I put it down, I may have a clear picture, but maybe it's not important. I'm not able to explain it. It's been going on for a long time.
Well, it does sound, it maybe comes back to what you started with earlier in the call about expectations. It may well be that the picture was fine, but the coming up with a clear picture would be one of your strengths. Mapping out the plan to get there, maybe that hasn't been as realistic as it needs to be. And so it'd be like you saying, well, I'm going to build a house. I've got a clear picture of the house and I'm going to build it tomorrow. And it's like, well, it wasn't realistic to do it in one day. But if you didn't know that, then you can feel like you failed because all you did was, you know, dig the footings or lay the concrete, which may well have been extraordinary to do that in a day. But because it wasn't the whole house, you feel like you failed. But maybe it's that your expectations are, you know, not as realistic as they need to be. And not just about your goals, but maybe that comes back to some of the relationships as well.
Got it. Yep. It could be. Yep.
Yeah.
Also, Dilip, for the important thing, start trying to make a commitment to somebody. Be verbally commit to something as an authenticator. When you commit verbally to someone, you're more likely to drive towards it, whereas it's less so if it's just to yourself. Because you're not, the other thing I'd also watch out for is, as an avoid verify, you're not naturally driven to prioritize. So you can just, everything becomes important. So really get crystal clear on what you need to achieve, make a commitment, and then just focus on doing those.
That's an excellent point, Ian. What you said, especially everything is important. I run into that issue a lot. Like, how can, like, yeah, I assign high importance to everything, and then effectively nothing is important because there are too many on the high.
Yep. Yep.
Great point, Ian. Thanks for sharing that. Any other authenticators? Okay, let's move on to the complete drive and talk about, I mentioned a couple of things on this drive before. So if we think about purpose and then the picture is like the ignition, what's the equivalent ignition for a completer?
The plan.
I don't. I think you're right, Judy. Not that they all need to start with P. I don't know that it's a P word for the. It could be. I can see a P word for the improvised drive, but the plan is important. I'm wondering whether there's something even before the plan. Like why do you have the plan? Like what's before the plan, or is that all it needs just to have the plan? Like if you're not a verifier, verifiers need a why. But if you're not, someone like Judy is a 4 in verify and a 7 in complete. Is it sufficient for you if you just have a plan, Judy? Is that really the key?
No, I need a purpose. I need a purpose and a why too.
Okay.
For what I'm going to do. And I was listening very intently about the purpose in respect to verifiers. And I'm wondering what the difference is for a completer in identifying their purpose.
Yeah. So great call out. And I would say to you, using our language, it maybe isn't a why. We use the same word, and this is where semantics can be confusing in our communication. But I'm wondering whether it's not so much a why as much as it's the ramifications. So, you know, a verifier needs to know why, but it's what makes it compelling for you is potentially, I'm asking, not telling, is when you see a number of ramifications that are going to cause a total mess, then that creates the why, you know, that creates the action, the purpose behind it, if you like, but it's probably more ramifications driven, I'm wondering. And I'd ask that of other completers as well. Are there others here as strong completers that say, yeah, I have a plan, but before the plan I need, or what ignites that plan is when I see significant ramifications? Or is it something else? Because it's interesting to me, the people that we think of as the natural planners, which would be the completers, are often the people that struggle the most with planning. So I think rather than sort of assume that this is good for them, I think it's worth digging into this a little bit and also hearing from those of you with this drive, because there's probably some nuances here that could help all of us. Steve, I know you're dying to share. You've got to be sitting there with some gold nugget that you want to share as a completer.
Yes. For all the others, use the ramifications. I hadn't thought about that. A lot of my tasks around project management are risk mitigation, and thinking through it. That's a very interesting comment. So it's got me thinking. Certainly, as Judy was saying, planning, inspiration, vision is certainly those sort. But I also the flip side on ramifications is certainly very significant. I think just thinking through it. A lot of things you said before, momentum, but something that I've helped to stimulate, I suppose, the complete side of my drive, and is finding a mentor, someone who's done it before, who has done bigger things before, and learning off them. Example, in the last few years, we worked very, very closely with a financial planner, and he's giving and showing ways to do stuff. So I've locked into people who are either more experienced or have done something. And the only other thing I've used is time to reflect and around the clarity. You were talking before, one of the other people were saying about having clarity about where we were going, what we're doing, a clear picture. So, but taking the time out to actually sit down and see where I'm sitting amongst those, and looking at the vision and the ramifications, I said, okay, I see both those surfacing. But I think the mentor thing and finding someone who was a little bit more experienced or done something and seeing what's possible. I'm always asking the question, how can we do it? What's possible? And that tends to.
It's a great call out, isn't it? Like, some people want someone beside them for accountability. Think of someone with a personal trainer, or they want it for accountability. And I think of that particularly for avoid complete people, but for a completer, having someone there in the mentoring capacity, more to show you the direction. It's often the completers that talk about wanting training, because they want to know what path to be on, what's the track I need to be on, that's more likely to get me there, because they want to be able to, embark on a journey that's actually going to have them arrive at their, desired destination. So having someone to give you that guidance, I think is it's a great call out. It's a very completer driven need.
Yeah. Creating that legacy and where you can measure something is certainly something, a big call out. If you can measure something, I'm very visual, so seeing that progress, I think, is another important component of helping keeping that on track and that vision alive. So yeah.
Thank you. Julianne, you're going to say something?
You just said the word I was going to ask. Is it around, you asked about what ignites the plan, and I was going to ask, is it around legacy? And when I just went to jump in, you then said the word legacy. So
but the legacy is, that's a good validation of coming back. So it's the same, in the same family as ramifications, and what I said earlier to Alana about the long-term ramifications. So that is legacy.
Yeah.
Right? Legacy has got a connotation that it's just about, something we want to leave with our life. But legacy can apply to so many, like the long-term ramifications can apply to so many parts of our life. I think of like someone, a teenager that doesn't keep their bedroom tidy, and you can harp at them and harp at them and harp at them, nothing changes. You can give them a plan, you can put a thing on their wall, like a roster of it, when and how they're meant to do it. You can give them the train, and nothing changes until one day they move out and they're in their own place, and all of a sudden, of their own volition, with no roster, with no training, they keep it really tidy. And you're like, what's the difference? Same person, and now they're doing it, and they're doing it willingly. The difference is ramifications. Back when it was your house, you were the one who was judged for having a messy house. Now when it's their house, they're the one that gets judged. So all of a sudden, when the ramifications change, the behavior changes. And I think it's I just use that as a simple, fun example that many people have seen over time. But I think the ramifications and I'd add into that thinking legacy, but ramping it up to make it more compelling, that's where you want to go to first, because when there aren't enough ramifications or you don't feel the sense of long-term / legacy impact, then any plan might be a plan, but it might just lack the sort of fervor that you need. When you run into different challenges, it'd be easy to get distracted from the plan. But if you've got that legacy picture in your mind, then hell or high water's not going to stop you from achieving that plan.
I think Alana's got a question, Paul.
Go, Alana.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on what Steve said. It really resonated with me when he said the importance of taking the time to reflect and create clarity before creating a plan. I've noticed as a strong complete that once I have a plan, I am really able to stick to it and follow it, but sometimes it takes me longer than I would like to create the plan, like until I'm already feeling overwhelmed, is that I start to create the plan. So learning to create that time to reflect before, I feel like would be really helpful. I just don't know, like it doesn't occur to me to sit down and create the plan when it doesn't seem urgent.
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually. And Steve, when you mentioned that word, I felt something inside me too, like it was a new dimension that I hadn't even thought about with that drive before. But it felt right for those of you who are completers. You might want to comment on it, that no matter what the plan is, there's something about taking the time. And I watch this with a lot of completers on other things. But when you can actually spend the time and it's not even about not rushing. It's something about, I'd be interested for you guys to explain, what's the significance of the time element to making that plan more, is it feasible or compelling? There is something about what you just said, that the power of spending the time as opposed to doing it quickly, no matter how correct it may have been. There's something about the time.
Yeah, just further on to that, Alana and Paul, it's with a completer, the tendency is to jump in and get the job done. You become like the doer type of person, and you can get sucked in. And I actually make sure I stop and I suppose take the umbrella view or the high level helicopter view, and to see what's going on. And it's even when you're in the mix of the plan and through it, and it's like your own review, but pull out of it and have the high level view outside of the detail. Otherwise, you just get consumed. And I think that both in preparation, but during the plan, I deliberately take time out to say, well, where on earth am I? What's going on around me? And
right.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, because the helicopter view is looking at the whole plan. I made a note earlier that this concept of harmony, which is really important to a completer. So it's not just enough that you complete the plan to do with this piece of the jigsaw puzzle. You've got to do it in a way that honors and keeps harmony with all the other parts of your life and other people's lives as well. And I guess taking the time to get off the ground up into the helicopter and look over the whole of the plan to make sure that everything is in sync is the value of taking that time. So it's not just time, it's time to get, what's the word, like the helicopter view, make sure that everything's in check, right? Everything's in harmony.
Yeah, things remain in context, and it just also, it feeds into the ramifications and purpose. If you're seeing that, yes, in the bigger picture, it is working, even amongst the day-to-day trauma, like saying, well, you're off track. It de-stresses you, and your overwhelming disappears because you say, okay, yeah, I know where I am.
That's good. That's good. Let's move on to the improvised drive. I'm just conscious of the time, and I'm also aware that to do this in the time frame we did today, I've just focused on the drives that go up to what we call the use drives. I know that it would be equally valuable to look at the drives that go down, but we'll bring them into the conversation when we do the ID masterclass and we dig into some of the challenges that people face. I'll make sure that we focus on the avoid drives as we go through that as well. let's talk about the improvised drive. For those of you who have been nice and patient, and when you think about goal setting and planning, is that even something that works for an improviser? And if it is, how do you go about it so that it does work for you and you're successful with it? Who would like to share?
Hi, it's Gail. Can you hear me?
We can go, yep.
Good, because I can barely hear you. My sound's a bit fuzzy. Anyway, so yeah, goal's an interesting word. It's not very long term. And if I do have something that's big and is long term, I have to chunk it down into little bits. So my end goal might be to, I don't know, lift a certain weight in my head. But if I put that down on paper and it's like 10 Ks more than I can do at the moment, that's probably not a good figure. But anyway, it's too much. So I can't do it. So I don't. So what I have to do is I have to do a little goal to be able to lift this little bit more. And then I have to do another one. And so eventually I get there. But if I try and write down to do this and it's big, it's not really going to happen because something else will distract me or it's just too far away. Long term is really difficult. So it's so chunking things down, small steps, baby steps. It's much easier. Even a day, it's much easier for me to look at the next hour than it is to look at the whole day. So I kind of work around the fact that I know I need to look in little bits. Everything's little bits, and then the big bits happen.
Okay. So I can see some combination happening there, Gail, with there's some of your avoid complete drive coming in there. Let me maybe try and give some direction here, and then Jim, you might want to comment because I know you probably got something to share on this too. Is the improvised drive is all about the urgency, the energy, the impossibility, and the wow part. So I would imagine if you've got goals that are exciting and are going to have a high impact or are a lot of fun and positive energy to do them, you're much more likely to do them. Taking on a goal that, no matter how much sense it makes, but it's just got nothing exciting about it, would be really hard to do. But something that's got energy written all over it, whether that energy is about the fun, the excitement you have, or the impact that it's likely to have, is far more likely to engage you and keep you engaged.
Yes, absolutely. That's
okay.
So true. But as I say, it doesn't matter what it is. It has to be little for me. It can't just. And yes, at the end of the day, it's exciting and fun. And it's really interesting because a personal goal, if there is such a thing, other people don't necessarily see. So you don't even discuss it. You kind of leave it to one side. You look at what is visible to others and how you impact. And so that to me is how it kind of fits together.
Yep. Thanks, Gail. Any other improvisers want to share?
Yes, I work on a challenge. If there's no challenge, then I just can't be bothered. But I'm also mindful of the fact that I've got a team and I'm responsible to them. So therefore, I become a servant to their needs, and up to a point, if there's no challenge to me, then I let the other drive of the other people in the team take over and run the parts that to me don't have a challenge.
So Jim, what ignites the goal? Like if what's the equivalent for the improviser of, the purpose, the picture, the ramifications? What would you say is the ignition factor for an improviser? Is it the challenge, or is it even something before the challenge?
It's something that can't be done or hasn't been done before. I mean, I've got to watch it because we have road safety signs, and one of them says you can't drive while you're tired. Well, I look at that and I go, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I've got to manage my behavior that way.
That's a good point. So it's the impossibility of something, if it really feels like it's never been done, or it's got that, you know, sense of impossibility, that really, that's what it needs to be to feel challenging.
Well, as an example, I went into a bookshop in 2003 or 4 and went to the business section and said, I want to write a book on productivity. And the grey-haired old gentleman said, well, that's a waste of time. You can't sell something like that. And I said, well, I'm working with Microsoft. And they said, well, so what? Have you got another book? And I said, well, I'd like to do one on sales. And he went, oh, not another book on sales. That's a waste of time. And I said, no, buyer behavior. And then he said, have you got another book? And I said, yeah, the third one would be emotional intelligence. And he said, well, when you've got the 3 together, it will work. So I'm finishing the third one now, 18 years later. But it's that long challenge, innate, him saying it can't be done, that inspires me to do it.
Okay. Suze, I just saw your comment in the chat. You agree with the challenge. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, that does really resonate with me. I think we've been spending a lot of time within the business goal setting for the year and planning, and I was really struggling with how to move. Like I was feeling very overwhelmed because I had too many things to do. And so for me, it was about that vision. Like I needed to know where we were going to, so that I could then work out. So once I knew that, then I could work out what the challenges were, which then allowed me to set the goals, which then allowed me to feel like everything was too much. I could then start to kind of compartmentalize it into the things I needed to get rid of and the things I needed to work on. And just all of that combined has just like, once I kind of accepted that this year hasn't got better than last year, and moved past that, because I think I fell into this hole of despair where I just gave up. I was like, I don't know what to do. It's not better. And once I moved past that, and now everything's a challenge, and now I'm like, you know, I've got my mojo back and I'm kind of cracking on with things, and it's hard, but it feels like I've got a purpose again.
Good on you. Good on you. Well, thank you for sharing that. And to all of you today who have shared, this is, you know, so helpful, I think, to people to realize that there's no one formula to goal setting and planning. It really does come down to mapping a path that fits your particular ID. So I hope you've got some insight out of that today, that you can think about, you know, if you're not as on track as you want to be, then have a look at your ID and your strongest drives, and look at some of those things we spoke about relevant to them, and which ones might need some attention to help you get as on track as you need to be. If you want to talk about your particular situation and get some help from the group and hone in on maybe the collective sort of impact of the drives as well as the avoid drives, then we will do that when we come back in 2 weeks' time in our ID masterclass, which will also be on the goal setting, but we'll be using what we talked about today to actually start solving some of the challenges that people are facing. Dilip, you're very welcome to kick that off if you still have that on your mind by then. Other than that, just thank you for joining today. Have a great couple of weeks. I'll finish on time for us all, and you know, really appreciate you being here, guys, and all the ongoing support that you give, not just here for these calls, but to my team and to, you know, whatever difference you make with the ID out there in the world. Have a great week. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.